Ladies and gentlemen, this is El Cochino, Tom Lawler, and I'd like to welcome you to the podcast that puts the lotion on its own skin, LuchaWorld. Bitchin'.
Welcome everyone to LuchaWorld Podcast, episode number 133. Fredo Esparza here, and this week we will be talking about all the latest news in Lucha Libre, including the recent passing of Raziel, one of the longtime CMLL wrestlers. He was there since 2003, so odds are if you are a CMLL fan or you were a recent CMLL fan or somebody who maybe hasn't been keeping track of what's been going on in CMLL, but you probably are familiar with what Raziel, his career in that promotion. We will be talking about his recent passing, some other CMLL news, including a lot of title changes that have been going on recently, mostly due to them trying to fill up some of the vacant titles that they had at the time, but also I think they're trying to position what they're going to do for what's going on right now with the Universal Tournament. They just had the first block this past Friday, so then they'll have the second and third blocks. They finally revealed how they had the format for those. I think the Wednesday prior to this past Friday show, they actually finally announced more or less what they were trying to do. I think some people kind of figured it out, seeing the lineup for the first Friday, featuring all national champions in the first block. We'll talk about that. We'll be talking about the upcoming 66th anniversary show of Arena Mexico, which will be happening on April 29th. They've already announced a couple of matches for that show. We'll also be talking about a big announcement for Triplemania in Tijuana. AAA has already announced 3 of the matches for that show. Also recapping the WrestleCon AAA show and a couple of other news that came up from recently. That's all we'll be talking about. But before we get to all of that, we should probably start off with the passing of Raziel. That really came by a big surprise. He'd been out of wrestling for a while because of an injury. I think going back to late November was when he had his last match, and then he missed. He was supposed to be in that CMLL World Middleweight tournament, but he missed that. He was pulled from that tournament because of the injury. So I think when we initially saw this past Monday, April 4th, the news, CMLL actually broke the news. I think they were the ones that broke the news, because what everybody else found was that the only other information we had was that Skyday was looking for friends or family members of Raziel, because he needed to talk to them. He didn't really specify for what reason. But then because I didn't even see that, I think Cubs fan was the first one that caught that. And obviously the people that were on Facebook at that time and might have seen the Skyday post during that time were obviously the first ones that noticed that. But the first time we heard of Raziel's passing was CMLL posting the news on their social media, which was very quick for confirmation. Usually we get somebody else confirming usually we get the rumor that somebody passed away from within the Lucha Libre community, that they start talking about it. But this time the promotion actually was the one that jumped ahead, and that's where we got the news. At first I really thought that maybe it was from an injury, maybe had caught COVID or something, but what we got later on was multiple reports that mentioned that he was in a car accident. There was another report during his wake that he had suffered a heart attack. There's some people who probably just assumed that maybe he suffered a similar fate to that of Macho Man Randy Savage, who suffered a heart attack while driving. So that's kind of what everybody thought had happened. I mean, I don't know if we're ever going to know, because in Mexico, they pretty much, once somebody passes away, and if it's something that they kind of can confirm wasn't a mysterious death or something that it was anything that was, I'm trying to think of the proper word, but something that's suspicious, they usually the next day they're already planning out they either bury them or they're doing the wake and all that stuff. So very quickly he was buried. So it caught everybody by surprise. A lot of people were just stunned, just seeing the reaction from a lot of the wrestlers that knew him. They were all very surprised. For the most part, everything I heard about Raziel was that he was a very professional as far as his career, took it very seriously, and he was he was considered a really good guy. Everybody just said he was a good guy. I think the one thing that we did see with him, like in the ring, was that as time went by and the fact that Raziel and Cancerbero weren't getting that big push at a certain point in their careers, especially being that they were in CML for such a long time, we started seeing that they didn't accept mistakes from young technicos. That they didn't take it that kindly, so they kind of like would sometimes, start sandbagging them, or just doing a lot of stuff that probably wasn't the proper way to react to a mistake done by somebody who's just starting out in wrestling. And some of the guys who make mistakes weren't even guys who were just starting out. They were just guys making mistakes, because that's part of, nobody's perfect. You make mistakes in the ring, and sometimes that happens. I think it just became more noticeable because Raziel and Cancerbero, whenever it happened, they kind of didn't really appreciate it happening during their matches. But yeah, Raziel, long-time member of the Cancerberos, a long-time tag team partner with Cancerbero. They go back to being a team back in, I would say, late 2003, early 2004 was when they started teaming up. And as you know, Cancerbero was known as Masala and Raziel was known as Caligula. I also found a little bit more information as far as previous identities. Actually, Rob Viper found another one. But his initial identity was Arquero Primero. He was trained by Aaron Alvarado, who wrestled as Robin and as Brazo Cibernetico. If you're not familiar with Robin, this family member of the Alvarados, he was part of Los Arqueros del Espacio, which was one of the more popular trios I guess they started around the mid 80s and then continued on into the early 90s. And then when they started like doing other stuff and moving into other points of their careers, Aaron kind of switched over to Brazo Cibernetico, and he started also training, and he trained Raziel. And Raziel, he actually gave him the gimmick Arquero Primero, and his idea was to start an Arquero del Espacio trio, which of course also included another member, which he actually named Robin 2, who happened to later on become Gio, when they joined AAA. Rob Viper found another gimmick that he wrestled as, and that was Golden. I didn't put that in his obit because unfortunately I actually couldn't find any information on Golden. It was basically he went from Arquero to Neo. I think I found one on Operativo and IWRG because that came in a couple of interviews. I think one of the interviews was Raziel talking about that time, and then later also Caligula and Raziel and CMLL. But he had a pretty long career. Not really somebody who was a big star, just a guy who was pretty much considered a good worker. I always thought he was somebody that I remember when Averno left CMLL and they were looking to keep the Hijos del Infierno or Hijos del Averno around. They had Mephisto and Hefesto, and they were trying to find somebody else. Obviously, the first choice everybody would mention was Hechicero, but then the other one that kept mentioning was Raziel, obviously along with Cancerbero. They kind of thought, why not just put them in that group? Because at that point in time, at certain points during that time, even though Virus was part of the group, it kind of felt like Virus was kind of pushed on his own. He was kind of like always teaming with random guys and then getting work in the super lightweight division, usually wrestling with Dragon Lee or guys who were moving up the cards. So Virus had more of a role in the promotion, and not to mention he was also a trainer. But Raziel, Cancerbero, for the most part, were kept like in the first or second match for a long stretch of time. I think when Super Commando left, that kind of seemed like that kind of lowered Raziel and Cancerbero down. Instead of moving up, they kind of were used more as the guys who were kind of starting to, they were the guys who had to, who were given the responsibility of being the first step for a young technical to move up in the cards, so they would work with them. And so because they were good, and unfortunately as the years went by, as I said, they kind of started taking liberties and not really being that it just didn't work as well. But for the longest time, they were pretty much just guys who you would see go, when they were with Virus, they usually worked second or third match, but when they were on their own, they were usually work first or the opener or second match. Yeah, but they were a long time tag team. They really got their big break, oddly enough, during the pandemic, COVID-19. I think there's really, in CMLL, there may have been maybe like 4 or 5 people that actually got a stronger push because CMLL decided that they did the Night of Champions thing, and they decided that they would let the fans vote. And little did they realize that the fans actually liked a certain group of wrestlers that were never getting a big opportunity. And that, of course, you saw Los Atrapasueños, Rey Cometa, and Espiritu Negro, who are very over with the fan base, with the CMLL fan base, the ones that actually vote and do stuff, that are like diehard fans. And then the Los Canceberos, Virus, Raziel, and Cancerbero. Obviously, Virus has been over with a lot of people over the years, and always people kind of wonder why he's not given more of an opportunity. But I think a lot of people understand him being smaller sized, that's probably the main reason he doesn't get the big opportunities. But every time he's been given that opportunity to work in a semi-main or a main event, he's always been able to do very well. But Raziel and Cancerbero, for whatever reason, never got that opportunity until 2020, when the fans actually voted them to challenge NGD for the national trios titles. They lost that match at the anniversary show. They kind of seemed to be, they actually eventually won those titles when NGD vacated the titles, when they won the CML World Trios titles. And then obviously 2021, that was really kind of like, they were kind of already like in 2020 getting that big opportunity where they were not necessarily main event level, but they were starting to work like third or fourth match on shows, and also even if they're working second match, it's very different because during the pandemic, instead of having a 6-match card, they've kind of gone more to a 5-match card, and they're still doing that at the moment. I think they do 6-match cards sometimes in Guadalajara, but for the most part, non-tournament CMLL shows have mostly been 5-match events. So they've kind of like, they were kind of starting to move up. And then in 2021, with so many wrestlers departing CMLL, it kind of seemed like they were getting more bookings, and also they had more of an opportunity to work the third and semi-main event level. And even, I think at certain points, they even worked main events. Not necessarily the trio, but they, like when they would sub for somebody that had just left or was injured or was gone or unavailable, also due to COVID. I mean, a lot of the stuff that was going on was also guys having to miss shows because they were dealing with COVID, either symptoms, or they had COVID, or they had been near somebody that had COVID and weren't allowed to wrestle on those shows. So Raziel got to work a little bit more frequently, higher on cards, and I think had he not passed away, I think it would have continued. I think they probably would have moved higher because really CML have moved up Los Gemelos Diablo and Sagrado to work a lot more frequently on main events. They've been working main events on Tuesday and Sunday shows, and a couple of other shows. I would assume Cancerberos probably would have gotten that role as well, kind of being main eventers on the second level shows, not necessarily the Friday show is the big show. I don't think they would be the main event on a Friday show, but on a Tuesday or any other show, they probably would have been main event level. So it's unfortunate that the timing of his passing was very unfortunate. There's never a good time. And also he was 49 years old. He was still relatively young, as far as not necessarily for wrestling. He's not wrestling him, but for a person that still had a lot of life left ahead. It's very unfortunate. And to hear some of the guys just talk about how, they had just seen him, Virus and Cancerbero talked about how they had just seen him recently. I know Julio Cesar Rivera said that one of the Panico, who's one of the programming directors in CMLL, saw him that Monday afternoon or early Monday, and he said he seemed like he was getting rehab. He was rehabbing his injury, and he said he looked fine and everything. And to hear that he had just died, it hit a lot of people by surprise. Very sad. I thought it was a cool moment where this past Friday, when CML started the Universal Tournament, they actually had a little bit of a moment for Raziel, and they had his national trios title with him. I don't know what they're going to do as far as that title now that he's passed away. They could possibly vacate the titles and have find a new partner. They've been teaming with Luciferno, but the idea when they brought in Luciferno was that he was going to join it and they were going to become a faction. Cancerberos, when they first started, were actually like a faction. So I think they probably thought, bring in Luciferno, have him be a faction member, and then that would allow the other members to do something else. Virus he's always like, when they need a big singles match, with a younger guy trying to move up, he's usually good for that. It's unfortunate. I kind of think they probably should just have Luciferno. Maybe they could, I don't know. I think they should do that. Maybe I don't know what they're going to do. I think that's, to me, that would be the easier solution. Because do we really need another tournament? CMLL has been tournament crazy for several years, especially the fact that they do them so frequently on the Friday shows. I think that's one of the big mistakes that CMLL is doing. I don't know if tournaments are a good thing for a Friday show, especially if you're paying. I don't know if a show that has multiple 3-minute matches on it is the right way to draw in a paying audience. Also at the same time, I think it's also not working when that's also the tourist night. It kind of feels like that. A tournament to me is more like a diehard type of fan thing. So I think that's probably something I would have just switched over to. Then Sundays are more of a family show, so I think tournaments are probably better suited for like a Tuesday type of show. I don't know. That's just me. But yeah, it's sad to hear that Raziel's passing. 49 years old. I think he probably had a lot more to offer Lucha Libre, and it's sad. Anytime. Recently, we've seen a lot of wrestlers passing away, not just in Mexico, but in the United States. Of various ages too. Just recently we had Black Warrior Jr. pass away. So it's been very, very sad to be following wrestling at this moment. I could see a lot of people kind of being a little bummed. To me, this one really kind of took me. I think it hit a lot of people by surprise, and hit him a little bit harder than most because he was still very active in wrestling. It's unfortunate. You got to see a lot of emotion from Virus and Cancerbero. Virus is somebody that you don't really expect that much emotion from, and he talked about how he knew Raziel going back to even before he joined CMLL, back when he was wrestling as Neo on the independent scene. Skyday was also very close to Raziel, so a lot of wrestlers. Very sad moment. Very sad news to start a week. It really puts things in perspective, because I think we're all busy talking about how we're talking about all this Lucha Libre news, all this other wrestling news, and then this hits you and it's like, oh man, that sucked. But getting back to the other news in CMLL. For whatever reason, CMLL recently, and actually this was during WrestleMania weekend, they went back-to-back nights where Euphoria and Soberano Jr., the father-son tandem in the promotion, lost their singles titles. Euphoria lost his national heavyweight title to El Terrible on a Friday night show, and then on a Saturday show, Dragon Rojo Jr. beat Soberano Jr. to win the CMLL World Middleweight title. That really just seemed a little bit odd, and it wasn't until to me, it was just title changes. When they had the title changes, my initial thought was that they were doing the title changes because they wanted people to get more enthused about the Universal Tournament. So suddenly, all of a sudden, within a week heading into the tournament, change of plans. Suddenly you had a new champion involved in the tournament, two new champions involved in the tournament. We've seen a lot of title matches recently. We've seen some titles vacated that were getting filled in previous weeks. Stigma winning the CML World Super Lightweight title, which was vacated for the longest time. There's still the title that I made a joke that Soberano Jr. had vacated the national. I think he vacated the national welterweight title, and so now having lost the middleweight title, he could actually challenge for that title. I look at it. I don't know. I kind of with Soberano Jr. There was always ever since the whole thing with Ultimo Guerrero, there's always kind of been a bit of a doubt that I don't know if Euphoria or Soberano Jr. would stick around for too long in CMLL. I think Euphoria probably has more to reason to stay long term, just because he's part of the Los Infernales. He's a prominent member. CML lacks a lot of heavyweight, so he's going to be like when they're going to have a heavyweight title match, he's going to be very much a name included in that list, because really other than Terrible, Hechicero, Cranio, Volcano, Ultimo Guerrero, there's not a lot of options. Even some of the guys who you think are heavyweights are actually more light heavyweight or even middleweight sized, and they pretty much just kind of like make it seem like they're heavyweights. So I don't know if he would necessarily want to leave. Then again, you never know. It wouldn't be such a bad idea for him if he felt uncomfortable. There's a lot of options. I don't know. I think there's a lot of options. It's not that they're better options. There's just more options available. I don't know. I think it'd be hard. Soberano Jr. probably has a little bit more options. There's always the possibility of just being working AAA, being a part of the group of guys that, you know, kind of like with Bandito, Dragon Lee, Dralistico, all these other guys that are kind of like in that group of guys that you kind of think could be guys that maybe get an opportunity in the United States, or maybe, you know, or Japan, or maybe they get more work in Mexico. I think it's a weird situation because right now that with Ring of Honor kind of being part of the whole AEW, you know, they're all part of that now. It kind of limits where some place where guys are going to go. It's not like you're going to see like a big splurge of what WCW did, where they brought in like 15, 16 luchadors. We're not really seeing that right now. We're maybe seeing like maybe a handful of guys in one promotion, maybe 2 or 3 in one, and then, you know, 2 or 3 in the other. Not as many guys available are getting as many opportunities, and even if they are, it's kind of like it's just like a weird situation right now. But you know, to me, I honestly like the fact that CML has pretty much shut themselves out of having any working relationship with anybody in the United States right now. I can kind of see maybe like someone like Soberano Jr. maybe thinking, you know, maybe it's better for me not to be in. I mean, even with New Japan, they're not even getting their guys sent to Japan, which is really weird, because what we're seeing now is like we're already getting luchadors announced for Noah. So I don't know. Maybe we'll get some announcements for. Maybe that's the reason Soberano Jr. was forced to vacate the title. Maybe he's gonna do. Maybe he's heading somewhere. I don't know. I mean, hopefully it would suck if he left, just because I think that CML, there is a little bit of a glimmer of hope, just because they do have a handful of guys that are really good, but then they have so many guys that are just really bad. And then there's also like this group of guys that are, it's not even the wrestlers themselves, it's just the way the promotion is booked, and the way it's all organized, the way even the way that the people have their matches. It's so it just doesn't come across properly. It just doesn't work well. You're not really getting any great matches right now. I think in the start of the year, there hasn't been a great match. There's been good matches, but nothing that has really stood out where people are saying, oh, you got to watch this match. Whereas we've seen independents, and maybe like even we've seen AAA and independents have a couple of matches where people are like, you should watch this. And a lot of it has to do with Hijo del Vikingo and probably Bandito and you know, Loretto Kidd probably being all the guys that are getting mentioned. But we're not really seeing that with CMLL, which is unfortunate. But yeah, you know, when Soberano Jr. Euphoria dropped the titles, seemed a little suspicious. I don't know. I'm kind of 50-50 right now with what's going on. What I do know is that Euphoria is going to be on a show. During Informa, they were announcing that there were Robin and Hombre Bala Jr. were the ones that brought it up, that they're having a baseball game against a rock band in late April. So I'm guessing maybe that was the reason why they had to change plans, and maybe that's why, because Euphoria is definitely on the baseball team, and he's playing the baseball game, and it's basically a weekend event where there's a baseball game, there's going to be a rock concert, and there's going to be a lucha show, and Euphoria's in the baseball game, and Euphoria and Soberano Jr. are working the lucha show. So I don't know, maybe that's the reason. Who knows? All I know is like ever since, you know, it's been a while in recent years, in the last 3 years, I mean, you just never know with CML. Guys just suddenly leave. people that you don't even think would leave suddenly just have left. I mean, like Vangelis. I mean, right now, Vangelis, I don't know how well it's going for him at the independent scene, but if he had stuck around in CML, he'd probably be working main events, to our disappointment. Because and there's been a few other guys, because I mean, we're seeing like Okumura's been regularly on a lot of shows. Dark Magic has been on a lot of shows. So and those guys are way lower than Vangelis on the card. Vangelis would probably be higher, although probably not, because actually they probably would have kept that faction that Okumura had with Vangelis and Dark Magic. They probably would have been working main events on Tuesday and Sunday shows. I don't know, it would have been awful, but good thing Vangelis left. That's all that matters. But yeah, that kind of seemed a little suspicious. They also crowned new Arena Coliseo tag team champions as Hombre Bala Jr. and Robin beat Akuma and Espato Jr. in Arena Coliseo to win those titles. Unfortunately for Hombre Bala Jr. and Robin, they were not included in the Universal Tournament. The Wednesday prior to the start of the Universal Tournament, which was this past Friday, CMLL kind of explained the formatting. The first Friday was actually all the national champions. The second Friday is going to be a three-way between the NWA World Historic Champions, and then the following Friday would be the CML World Champions. The only rule with the CML World Champions is that no one that has another title can be. If somebody has two titles, like Angel de Oro, who is the national, I don't know what national title, I think it's the middleweight title that he has, or the light heavyweight title. He can't be in the CMLL title block for the Universal Tournament, even though he is one half of the CML World Tag Team Champions. I think his brother will be in that block, but it was interesting to see that. I think that's actually a pretty good, that makes a little more sense. At the same time, that probably means you don't have to fill out every single title, as long as you have 8 champions for the CML and national titles, and then you have 3 for the historic. That's all that matters. You should be good with that as far as doing the three-way. So Templario won the first block, so at least we know one good opponent one good challenger will be in the final. The historic title champions are Mystico is the middleweight, Volador Jr. is the welterweight, and I think Stuka Jr. is the light heavyweight. So I'm guessing one of those guys will. I think any of those 3, I think I'm okay with, because they're all pretty good. I would kind of prefer Mystico or Volador Jr. ahead of Stuka Jr. I'm guessing, I wouldn't be shocked if Stuka, they all have a reason to advance, just because Volador Jr. is somebody that always gets moved up, and Volador Jr. Templario already in that would automatically make it a good match. It'd be hard for it to be any. It would be hard for it to be, no matter who the third person would be, it would be hard for it to be anything less than a good match. And then you have Mystico, who's very popular with the fan base, and he's good also. Stuka Jr. is good also, and I could see him kind of being an upset winner, just because they obviously kind of, if they're still going with the plan of Stuka Jr. versus Atlantis Jr. for the anniversary in the mask match, I think that would make sense, maybe that he would win it and advance to the Universal Tournament final. Speaking of somebody who was gone for a while, Atlantis Jr., he was MIA for about 2 weeks, and people were starting to wonder what was going on with him, and fortunately he did show up again. That's why I think that's where I'm kind of confused, because you start to wonder, maybe someone's leaving and then suddenly they pop up. I know Soberano Jr. and Euphoria reappeared on a couple of shows, so maybe it's not exactly what we're thinking it's going to be. Maybe it's just, like I said, I think it might have been that CML just wanted a little bit more excitement leading into the Universal Tournament, so they had title changes to change so that people would be like, whoa, that's some changes in that. But yeah, that should be an interesting tournament final. I'm not a big fan of these tournaments, honestly. Like, I think mostly the finals is all that matters, so they probably could have just done without any of these other things. Honestly, they could have done it over a week. Just do the 3 blocks you could have done on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday shows. I mean, they could have done the national champions on a Sunday, done the historic champions in Puebla, and then done the CML champions on a Tuesday, Arena Mexico show, and then they could have had it on the three-way for the 66th anniversaries. That would have saved you a lot of time. I get that they don't want to they kind of want to do this over a weekly period, but it's like, who wants to watch tournaments, especially when they're only 3-minute matches, and usually for the most part they're not very good. CML also announced a couple of matches for their 66th anniversary of Arena Mexico show, which is happening on April 29th. They announced a Relevos Atómicos women's match, which is 4 versus 4. Nothing really special, just Rudas Técnicas teaming up in another match, and nothing much to it. Obviously, the Universal final will happen on that show, but they did announce a dream tag match between Rey Bucanero and Ultimo Guerrero versus Averno and Mephisto. This probably would have been great if this was maybe 10 years ago, because I think the last time they had a match was in 2002. So 10 years ago would have been 2012, so 10 years later. So they're doing it 20 years later. Rey Bucanero is a lot older. Ultimo Guerrero and Averno can still kind of go. Mephisto is kind of actually still okay. So, I mean, I think it's good enough where you're going to get a little bit of it. It's more of a nostalgia, and I think it's going to be something that a lot of the diehard fans are going to be like, yeah, 2 of the best tag teams in CML history, especially over the past 20 years, are going to be in this match. Should be fun. I thought that was a good thing to do. It should be a good match also because they're kind of doing a little bit more with the lightweights. So I hope there's at least a Panterita del Ring junior match underneath. I would personally go for a 6-match card for that show just because you kind of want people to want to watch that. And I don't know, to me, that's what I would want. I would prefer something a little bit stronger. Although, to be fair, if you're only watching these shows on CML's YouTube channel 2 weeks, I think it's 2 weeks later, then you probably just want a 5-match card because it gives you a better chance of getting all 5 matches on there, or at least getting the 4 matches. So CML, really, that's all it's been. A lot of title changes, a lot of build up to tournaments. I think I'm expecting at least one more tournament soon with the welterweight title being vacant. And like I said, don't be shocked if Soberano Jr. wins back his title. I don't think he would do that. I don't think that would just be a going backwards type of thing. My guess is he's probably either going to challenge for the title against Dragon Rojo Jr. or another title, or he's probably being positioned to go against something else. Personally, I would personally like to see Euphoria and Soberano Jr. team up and win the CML World Tag Team titles. But I think there's also the possibility that he could leave. Both could leave just because of the whole politics in the promotion right now with their situation with Ultimo Guerrero that, it's still going on. And although it hasn't been anything that is bad. I don't think it's been as bad as what some other stuff that we've seen from previous issues, when Ultimo Guerrero had the issue with the Alvarado family. I don't think it's as bad as that. But it's still something that's lingering. And also it's not helping that the LuchaWorld family right now is kind of running the promotion like they did in the early 1970s. So right now you're really seeing if you look back at go look at the lineups, go back, look at 1974, 1975, look at CMLL lineups, the EMLL lineups at that time, and then start noticing all the guys starting to leave during that time period, and then start looking at the lineups going forward. And then, you start seeing, and even going on for the next couple of years, you start seeing guys leave. And really the one big saving grace when those guys all left was the fact that Paraguayo joined the main roster at around the same time that so many guys were leaving. So they were able to get somebody who was super charismatic and turned out to be a big star, and they were able to put him in there with El Santo to build him up, and that kind of kept them strong for a while until eventually Paraguay also left and went to Promociones Mora. AAA had some news recently as they made some announcements for their Triplemania in Tijuana show, which I think is happening in the summer. I think it's in June. Don't hold me to that because I forgot to write the date for that. But they actually announced 3 matches. Obviously, actually not 3 matches, 4 matches, because they're gonna actually technically 5 matches, but it's more of a tournament concept. They're gonna continue the semifinals of the Ruleta de la Muerte Mass tournament in Tijuana. That will feature the semifinals, and that should be we'll have more of an idea of what's. That should be interesting because I still think they're going to go with at least two of the guys who can. I think they're going to go with three guys that can still work. So I think you're going to see, because I think the idea is that the losers are advanced. So if the losers are advancing, you'd want the better workers kind of losing. So we might actually see Psycho Clown losing to Connect, which I think would be hilarious. Hilarious in a way where it's like, there's no way somebody who's in their 30s should be losing a wrestling match to somebody in their 70s, but that's Lucha Libre for you. They also announced an 8-women masked cage match, with the final 2 advancing to a singles mask match. They did announce a couple of the women. I think, from my understanding, there's probably going to have to be at least, because they only announced, I think, 5, and I think the guesses were maybe 2 other that aren't, and then they kind of like I think that leaves them to 1 that they probably would have to bring in that's not in the promotion right now. I wouldn't be shocked if they bring somebody in. I think there are a couple of masked female wrestlers on the independent scene, not just in Mexico, but in the US, that they could possibly bring in. And the big match that was announced was the first time meeting in a tag match. The Hardy Boyz, Matt and Jeff, are going to be in AAA for Triplemania in Tijuana, and they will be wrestling Los Hermanos Lee, Dragon Lee, and Dralistico. That should be quite the match, just because the Hardys, one of the greatest tag teams of all time, really, going up against the Los Hermanos Lee, who are one of the better tag teams in Mexico right now. It's kind of interesting. Like, lately, we've kind of seen a resurgence of tag team wrestling in Mexico, for whatever reason, even within CMLL, when we've seen the national tag team titles, and now the Arena Coliseo tag team titles have been filled out. We've seen a lot more tag team wrestling, and then in AAA, we're seeing FTR going to Mexico. We're getting the Hardyz, the Young Bucks. So there's kind of been a resurgence of tag team wrestling. Even the independents. One of the reasons Tejano Jr. said he left AAA was he wanted to team up with his brother Supernova, and they actually won the NWA Mexico tag team titles, which is kind of, so you're kind of seeing a little bit of a resurgence in tag team wrestling in Mexico. Hermanos Lee versus the Hardy Boyz is going to be something that's going to happen at Triplemania in Tijuana, and I think that's the best word to describe what that match should probably be. Something, because we really don't know. It's possible that match could be great. It's also possible that it could be a complete, I don't know, like it could be a complete sight to see, just because we don't know what to expect from any of these guys. It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a good match, personally. I think you have Dragon Lee and Dralistico, who probably are familiar with the Hardys. I don't think the Hardys are as familiar with them. They might be a little familiar with Dragon Lee, just because Dragon Lee worked New Japan and has been a little bit more mentioned. I don't think they're familiar with Dralistico at all, and I wouldn't be shocked if they think he's I wouldn't be shocked if they thought he was Sin Cara or Mystico Caristico. I would not be shocked if initially they were kind of thinking that might have been him. They might be confused by all that. Hopefully, I'm hopeful that this will be a good match. It's probably going to be, the fact that it's happening in Tijuana, that automatically tells me that it's going to draw well, just because you're getting those 2 tag teams, and you're going to probably get a lot of people traveling from the U.S. to Mexico to watch that, just to witness that match. You're going to get a lot of diehard fans, Lucha fans, that are going to want to watch the Ruleta de la Muerte matches, because basically you're still going to have a couple of legends as well, some of the bigger name AAA guys. So it should be a really good show. Should be interesting. Like I said, interesting, something. That's the best way to describe what that tag match could be. And I'm excited. I'm actually looking forward to that more than some of the other tag team matches, just because it's something we haven't seen. And I'm actually kind of surprised that AAA would give Dragon Lee and Dralistico this match. You would think they would have given it to, the Lucha Brothers for one, or Hijo de Vikingo. Although I'm guessing they probably have Hijo de Vikingo planned for something else. But yeah, those were the matches that were announced. Right after that, AAA had their show at the WrestleCon on March 31st at the Fairmont Hotel in Dallas, Texas. Show got a lot of good reviews. For the most part, it was good. It had some interesting matches. But the big news was actually the big reveal at the end of the show when Psycho Clown beat Taurus. Psycho Clown was attacked by La Empresa, and they were joined by Jeff Jarrett and Karen Jarrett, and it was revealed that Jeff Jarrett was behind La Empresa and was back in AAA. So we're getting Jeff Jarrett back. If you're a fan of Jeff Jarrett, or if you're a fan of the whole Jeff Jarrett and Karen Jarrett in AAA scene, then you're probably excited about it. There is this curiosity to Jeff Jarrett, just because the last time he was there, I think was that show where he showed up at in no condition to wrestle, and it was that Copa Triplemania. But it still was amusing. Karen, I think, probably gets more praise as the one that really stood out. But that should be a fun. That them coming back should be fun. Didn't surprise anybody that they would be coming back, just because as soon as Jeff left WWE, it was kind of like expected that he would come back, because he's always had a very good relationship with AAA, and since first showing up, I think he's been going to AAA since about 2004, 2005. So it's been a long time, on and off. I don't think it's been every year, because there's been a few years where he didn't go, but for the most part, he would go, pop up, show up, as Jeff Jarrett, the heel, the mega heel foreigner. And for the most part, he's done pretty well at certain points, and he's somebody that is a big name, but also he's kind of left little to be desired as far as match quality. But for the most part, the fact that they're bringing him in, and he's the one that leads La Empresa, is very entertaining. Also on the show, La Empresa threw Microman in a trash can and carried him away after his match, where he actually teamed up with Niño Hamburguesa and Taya to beat La Hiedra, Mini Abismo Negro, and Rey Escorpion in a lumberjack match. The Phillip brothers actually worked the opener, beating Christy James and Ryan Kidd. I think it's the Philippe brothers. So I think they're probably, I wouldn't be surprised if they become more of a regular tag team in, or make a few more appearances in AAA. Bestia 666 and the Mecha Wolf retained their NWO World Tag Team titles by beating Aerostar and Drago. There's another Aerostar and Drago versus the Hardy Boyz. I think they wouldn't have done that, just because they really wanted a big name team, and right now the Munoz family is kind of a bigger name. And I also think they kind of did the Dragon Lee Dralistico match because they probably want Rouge at some point to make his way back onto a AAA show. Aramis, Mr. Iguana, and Octagon Jr. beat Abismo Negro Jr., Ares, and Fabi Apache. Drago Kid, Jack Cartwheel, and Pagano beat Gringo Loco, Puma King, and Sam Adonis. Gringo Loco was part of the La Empresa. I actually think that's Gringo Loco, Puma King, and Sam Adonis is actually a pretty good faction, a good trio. I think they had, obviously, Estrellita's part of the group, and Microman, and Jeff Jarrett and Karen Jarrett. So that's actually pretty good. That's actually a better faction than they've had in the past, as far as when they've done the foreign Legion. Actually, they also have DMT Azul, who wasn't on this show, but he's part of the La Empresa. So they kind of have a better faction. For whatever reason, they've kind of come up with a better group. I mean, yeah, they have a couple of ex-CMLL guys, but it's not like this thing where it's like so blatantly looking like CMLL. There's a little bit more of not only is it it's a rib, a shot at CMLL, but at the same time, they have a little bit more of a colorful look to them. They got the whole foreigner thing with Jeff, Sam, and Gringo Loco, and then you also have Puma King and DMT Azul, that, and Estrellita also being a former, and Microman. So you have a nice blend, and Microman kind of not wanting to be in the group, so that's probably going to lead to something at some point. I wouldn't be shocked if they bring in some other micro to feud with him, just because they would need somebody, probably even Gallito. I would actually do that, Gallito and him, just because Gallito would probably be his best capable opponent right now. They could bring in Guapito, but Guapito's not good. Really, it would have to be Gallito right now. I would say he'd be the one that I would bring in. I wouldn't be shocked if they bring in like a foreign micro, maybe like a Hornswoggle to feud with him. But yeah, that was interesting. Then we had Loretto Kidd beating Bandito and Flamita to retain the AAA World Cruiserweight title. That was a great match. Overall, I think it was kept pretty short though, if I recall. But for the most part, that was a really good show. I mean, as far as for a AAA show, I think that's kind of like what you were hoping every AAA show could be like, where it's not overbooked and it doesn't feel like it's going on and it's not adding more to, like, it doesn't become like something that's time consuming. To be fair, I think one of the drawbacks with, and this isn't just AAA, I think this also includes CMLL. One of the drawbacks with AAA and CML doing pay-per-views is that in some cases, if you have the option of watching it that way, but at the same time, you can also wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and odds are they're going to air it on their on one of their televised shows. So then you end up watching that version later on. So you have the option of doing that, which I think also kind of hurts, just because I think a lot of people in the back of their heads are thinking, I could just wait 2 weeks, watch it that way. And I think it hurts the promotions. In some ways, I think it helps, just because I don't think it doesn't matter. I think if there's people that if they're not going to pay, they're not going to pay. So you're not going to win them over. Some people like if they are really wanting to watch it, they'll pay for it, and if it airs later on, they're okay with it, because that whatever airs is going to be edited down a bit for television, and there's not going to be certain things that aren't going to that might have aired on the live show that won't be airing on the tape show. But overall, I thought that was a good show. Some other news: Hijo de la Alebrije and IWRG have parted ways. I know many of you did not see this coming and are very saddened to hear this. Not really, because we all knew this. For whatever reason, ever since IWRG has done the whole contract signing thing, that gimmick on their face, posting it on their social media, I think for the most part, all of them have quit that, have left the promotion despite having signed contracts. I think there's been a few. I know, who was the other one that, oh God, there's been a couple of people that have done that besides Hijo de Alebrije. I think Baby Extreme did that too. It might have been him that did that. I know he did one where he signed a contract with somebody. It might have been Chaos, but the Chaos promotion. But I know he did one of those. There was somebody else that did one for IWRG, and they're not there anymore. But for the most part, that whole thing is so weird. Hijo de Alebrije, I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up in AAA or maybe even CML, just because he's why not? He could go anywhere. He could still be Alebrije on independent shows too, so he'll show up somewhere. The other news from IWRG, and this is probably the biggest news in Big Boy and Big Chica have been in search for a new member of Los Strippers Big. Big Mike left the group. He started a new faction called Old School. I think it features Fulgor. Somebody else is in the group, but it's like they're trying to do like an old school thing where they're trying to feud with all the new school type, the new generation of wrestlers, the high flyers, which is kind of cool, because I think that Big Mike is one of the better bases in Lucha Libre, and I think that's going to be something that he's, if he's going to focus on that, that's going to probably make him more of that's kind of building his reputation than anything else. I don't know if it's going to build up his bank account, but at least his reputation, if he wants to be known as one of the top guys in some aspect of Lucha Libre, then that's, base is a good thing to be. A good base is a good thing to be in Lucha Libre. But Big Boy and Big Chico they posted, IWRG posted a video of them searching for Stripper Big member, and IWRG will be holding auditions on April 13th in Arena Naucalpan. They made the announcement that the only requirements to join Los Strippers Big are you must be chubby, you can dance, and you must be horny, which is hilarious. And I hope we get like some audition video highlights of who shows up to want to join the Strippers Big, kind of like those Guapos, the Shocker Guapos sketches from the early 2000s when he was starting Universidad de Guapos. We would get some of the most random guys, and I think we got some early looks of some guys that would later be regulars in CMLL. I always thought that was kind of cool. Hopefully we get that for the Big Strippers auditions. Hopefully they'll post it on their YouTube channel, on their social media. It should be fun. I look forward to that. So that's it for this episode of the LuchaWorld Podcast. Hope everybody has a wonderful week. Be sure to check out LuchaWorld.com for the latest news in the world of Lucha Libre. You can also visit my other site, RetroWrestling.com, for old school wrestling reviews. For more audio content, Check out the Retro Wrestling YouTube channel for show reviews, the LuchaWorld Podcast, and other content. You can also join the LuchaWorld Patreon, which has 3 different reward tiers and features Lucha Magazine write-ups, more podcasts, and the monthly video vault featuring 10 different show titles available in ISO file format, which is, DVDs converted into ISO files. You just extract them and you have yourself a DVD. So that's it for this week. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will be back again soon.